Hello, it's me, Maya. You probably can't tell from this little clip that I'm showing you here, but I am in a new apartment because my last one flooded last week. Oh my gosh, it was just last week. Time is weird, you guys. Yeah, my apartment flooded suddenly in the middle of the night, and it was a total nightmare. It's a long story, and I'm going to tell it here because it was horrible, and the least I can get out of this is an entertaining video because it might be an interesting story for you guys to hear. And it will also explain why I am in, a new place, even though it's like basically the same place, just a little bit different. Okay, yeah, this is gonna be a long story. So grab a snack, grab a drink, get comfortable if you wanna go into this with me, because I have notes on my phone that I'm going to be referring to because otherwise I would just be all over the place. But I have lots of notes. A lot happened. You guys ready? Yeah, my apartment flooded. It was a nightmare. It was not fun. I had human waste falling out of my walls. It's a whole time. So yeah, let's just jump right into it, shall we? This all happened last week, out of nowhere. Like, out of nowhere, no warning, nothing. It just happened out of nowhere. And thankfully, my sibling Eve was actually spending the weekend with me. And this all happened, it started Sunday night around midnight. And so they were planning to leave, Eve was planning to leave on Monday. But because all of this happened, they actually ended up staying with me longer and helped me make this emergency move, all of this stuff. They were a huge help. But yeah, it was me and my sibling Eve. We were just hanging out, chilling. Thank God we were awake when this all started happening, because otherwise we would have been in several inches of water, I'm sure. But yeah, we were awake. It was around midnight. We were just hanging out, watching some videos, watching a lot of Blackpink videos. That was kind of where we were at. And then all of a sudden we start to hear this like gurgling, like bubbling sound. And I like paused the video and we're both just sitting there listening, and I remember saying, I'm afraid to get up and go see what that is, because it was like loud and weird. Like, we had never heard anything like that before. So after it doesn't stop though, we both jump up and run to my bathroom, which is where the sound was coming from, and we see that it's coming from the toilet, which is slowly starting to fill up with water and suds, like soap suds. My toilet's starting to fill up with like soapy water. It was really weird. So we start looking at that and we're like, oh gosh, okay, I guess the toilet's getting plugged up. I hope it doesn't flood. It didn't flood. That didn't flood. Don't worry, the flood happened elsewhere. The toilet actually stopped filling up until it got pretty close to the top. But then as we turn around to leave and like try to get something to otherwise assess the situation, we turn around and see that water is just starting to flood out from like the baseboard of where the floor and the wall meet. It just starts pouring out into my bedroom because, okay, I don't know if you guys know this. Actually, you might have seen it from my apartment tour video if you guys watched that, but my apartment was simply a living room with an entryway, a little hallway in the kitchen, my bedroom, and then my bathroom. And so my bedroom and living room, there's a wall in between that separates it, and we found that water was pouring out on this side from my bedroom. And when we go out into the living room, we see that water is also flooding out from here. So water is flooding out at the baseboard and floor on both sides, and so it's kind of a lot of water. So we both start like panicking. We're like, oh my god, grab towels, like grab anything. And thankfully, because I actually do laundry oftentimes in my bathtub because I don't want to pay to go to the laundromat, and also germs, I actually had a lot of towels on hand, thank god again. So we grab all that we can. Well, first we like move things out of the way. We're kind of doing both at the same time. We're trying to move furniture and get things up off the floor, especially equipment and cords. We're moving all of that stuff out of the way and trying to use the towels to block up the water, right? So this starts happening. It's like, again, like I said, midnight, past midnight, it just starts flooding. So I call what they say are emergency services. What they say, I'm talking about like my apartment complex, what they call their emergency services. So I call that number, someone picks up, and I'm like, hey, my apartment has suddenly started flooding. And she's like, oh, okay, we'll like send someone over to come look at it. So I'm like, cool, okay. So we're trying to keep everything, you know, under control. Thankfully the water isn't like rushing out too much. It just was kind of like the one rush of water, but then it kind of stopped. But it still like soaked all of these towels, and it, you know, it got some things wet, but thankfully we acted really fast, and because I had Eve's help, we were able to like, both of us pick up the heavy shelf that was in the way and move it out of the way, you know? So we were able to kind of get all that stuff out of the way. So we wait a little bit, and then we hear a knock at the door, open it up, and it's this one dude who shows up with one towel. He shows up with one towel, and he's a security guard. So he's not maintenance. This isn't emergency maintenance. This is a security guard who has showed up with one towel. So he walks in, and we're like, thanks for the towel. Here's what's going on. Like, I'm explaining the situation to him, but this guy doesn't know like what the F is going on. Like, he does not know what the hell's going on. He just shows up, and I tell him, because from where the water is coming from, I think it's coming from the water heater, right? Because like I said, it was that middle wall where water was flowing out, and right where that middle wall is also where my water heater is. And so I hadn't like opened things up to try to look at anything. I was just like, I'm guessing it's the water heater. That's where all the water is coming from. So he like opens the closet to the water heater. He has his like little flashlight, and he's looking, and he's like, oh yeah, it looks like your water heater thing is clogged or something. So I'm like, okay. But then he goes to the toilet, because I mentioned the toilet. I'm like, the toilet also filled up with like soapy water. Oh, and another thing too, this water that was like leaking out was warm, which was like, ew. My guess, knowing what I know now, that was someone's used bath water that they had drained out. It was someone's used bath water that I was getting in my apartment and like touching, because I had to put down all of the, you know, towels and everything and soak it out. It was warm, like gross, but it gets so much worse. Oh my gosh, this is just the start. So then he goes into the bathroom to look at the toilet, and we're telling him it's like, it's not the toilet. Like, the toilet didn't even overflow. Like, it's clearly something else. But he just like doesn't listen. He grabs a plunger and starts to like plunge the toilet. And Eve and I are just kind of like giving each other the, okay, like this guy does not know what he's doing. He does that. He then flushes the toilet, which I was too afraid to do. I didn't like touch anything. I didn't want to flush anything. I didn't want any more water like rushing out. So he just like goes in there, doesn't know what he's doing, plunges the toilet. Nothing comes out because it's not clogged, flushes it. Thankfully no water happens to come out that time, but then he like comes out and he's like, well, the water went down, and we're like, okay. And then he goes back and takes a look at the water heater again, and then it's like, oh, well, your water heater might have overheated, and like that might have been what caused it to, you know, leak all over the place, because if it overheats, like, it'll release water, because otherwise it could explode, which like is a thing that can happen. So I asked him, I'm like, well, was it getting hot? Because he said that he turned down the temperature, and I'm like, well, was it hot? And he was like, no, it wasn't even close. So like, first you say it was clogged something, and then you go to the toilet, and now you're saying this, but it was like, this guy did not know what he was talking about. So we were like, okay, but like, can someone fix it? Like, clearly it's not you. Can someone fix it? And he was like, oh yeah, you have to put in a work order in the computer, like on the system, and someone will come over and fix it in the morning. Which like obviously wasn't great, because it's like this could just happen again in the middle of the night, basically, which is kind of what he said. He was like, well, it's probably, you know, people above you using water, and that's probably what's causing it to flood, so hope that no one else uses water tonight. And Eve goes, well, what happens if they do? And he was like, I don't know. So like, thanks, yeah, thanks a lot for your help. So then he's like, yeah, I can't really do much else, but he's like, but I can take your towels, you know, that you use to soak up the water, and go dry them for you. And so we're like, sure, yeah, okay, like, do something helpful at least. So he takes our soaking wet towels and leaves. And at this point, it's like 1:30 in the morning, and he said it'd be like a half hour. So we wait until like past 2 in the morning when he comes back. And he comes back holding these towels and he's like, yeah, sorry, I couldn't get them all dry, which means that he didn't like spin them at all in the washer or anything. He just threw them in the dryer and like hoped that they were dry. These towels were wet. He gave us back these wet towels still. Like, I have a video which I will insert here if I still have it, of us just like dropping the towels on the floor and they're just like going thud because they're filled with water still. They're still wet. Eve, how dry are the towels? How dry are the towels that he just brought back? Are they nice and dry? Oh, they're so fucking wet. So he gives us back these towels and we're like, all right, this guy was just like a joke, not helpful at all, but at least we have our towels back and at least we could still use them to like maybe block water if more happens. So he basically tells us that there's nothing else we can do, there's no one else on site to help us. He tells us that like, yeah, people will be over first thing in the morning, but he like won't give us a time because I'm like, well, what do you mean first thing, like what time? And he was like, well, I can't say because they don't like it when I make promises for them, you know, this whole thing kind of a deal. Which like I partially get if you're that middle person and like another team of people gets mad at you, but also there needs to be a better system of what else happens. So we go to bed. I'm sleeping super lightly, super restlessly. Like any sound that happens in the night, I like wake up and jump awake because I'm like, is it more flooding? Thankfully nothing floods else in the middle of the night. So, and again, I wake up pretty early. I say pretty early, I wake up around 7, so I didn't get much sleep, but I couldn't go back to sleep because I was like, I don't know when they're gonna be coming. I don't know if I have to be up and awake because other people in the building, I could hear other people in the building wake up and I'm like, is someone gonna shower? Is someone gonna flush a toilet? I don't know what's gonna happen. So I just got up then, started getting dressed, started getting ready, and just kind of had to sit and wait. A couple hours pass and I'm like telling my mom this. I'm messaging my mom because I'm like, hey, Eve might not be coming back today because they said that they would, you know, try to help me out with this situation. So my mom was like, call the office, even though you put in the work order, like let them know that there's a work order in, because sometimes people don't check emails, you know, first thing in the morning, but if it's a phone call, you can let them know. So yeah, so the office doesn't open up until 9. So like right at 9 o'clock, I call the office and I'm like, hey, my apartment flooded last night. Do you guys get my work order? Is it in there? Like, can you have people over here? And the person on the other side is like, oh, yep, we have your work order, but the maintenance team is still working on, you know, things from last week. Like they're just getting to things from last week that they didn't get to, you know, so they'll be over there like after they finish those things. So unless those were also floodings, I guess I'm not really sure what kind of priority list they have, but I don't know. I would kind of think that a flooding would be like important, but I guess not. So thanks, I guess. So Eve is waking up now a little bit later. We're just kind of like getting ready for the day. We're just kind of like waiting until these guys, I guess, finish up with whatever they were doing so they could come by and clean up. And then more water, the exact same thing that happened last night, just starts pouring out of the walls. So we freak out. Eve is still like in pajamas. They just got up, like not fully dressed. I'm just in like sweats and stuff, and thankfully I kind of got dressed because I didn't know when they were gonna show up, so I was kind of prepared, but like we just had to go. So we grab our damp towels, or wet towels from the night before, put them back up. We're freaking out again. I call back the office and I'm like, hey, more water is flooding in right now. Like, water is happening. That's like what I said because I was panicking. I'm like, water happening. Like, can you send people over right now? Like, right now. It's flooding again. So she was like, oh, yep, like I'll let them know. Like, we'll send someone over. So what she meant by someone was, again, she meant one person. At least he was on maintenance, like on the maintenance team. This guy comes over and he shows up with, again, like 2 towels, like 1 or 2 towels. And it's like, flooding, like flood. What do you, I don't know. Apparently there was a shortage of towels that they just didn't have any available. So they could only bring like 1 to 2 at a time. That was what they said. So yeah, this guy shows up and he at least seems to know what he's talking about. He's older than like the one security guard from the night before. He goes right away to this closet, opens it up, and he like pulls back this panel on the wall, and he's like, oh yeah, it's your main drain. Like the main drain is clogged, which again, I don't really know what it means. I think it's the main drain for the whole building is kind of what I'm assuming. But he was like, it's clogged. That's what's happening. So yeah, shockingly, it wasn't any of the things that the security guard the night before had said, but yeah, who's surprised there? So it's supposedly this main drain. So he goes on to explain that they have a contractor who they are like in partnership with or something, who they have to call on site, and like they're the ones who unclog the drains. And so he's like reassuring me, he's like, they're super fast, he's like, they're gonna be here in no time, like don't worry about it. So he says what he's gonna do is he is going to go out, call the contractors, and then like bring more towels. So I'm like, yep, cool, more towels is gonna be great. So he leaves, he comes back, and then he goes, so he's like, I have some bad news. He's like, I have some bad news. He's like, the contractors can't be here until at least 3. Keep in mind, this is like 10 in the morning, right? So it's like hours away. And my apartment has already flooded twice. Yeah, not great news. So he's like, this is really unusual. He's like, usually they're really fast. He's like, but they can't be here until 3. And so I'm like, I look at him and I'm like, what do I do? Like, what do I do in the meantime? Like, what do I do? This place is flooding. And so he's like, he's like, I'm gonna go tell the people above you to stop using water. He's like, I'm gonna go and tell them. And then he goes, I'll also send someone over with a water vacuum, right? Because it's like, everything is soaked, towels are soaked. They don't have towels either for anything. They're just out of towels. So he goes, yeah, we'll just like bring a water vacuum over, and I'll tell people above you to like stop using water. So I'm like, okay, like, what are you gonna do? So he leaves. Again, we're just trying to clean and like, you know, do all this kind of damage control. Another guy comes in, another maintenance guy comes in with this water vacuum, right? And so he starts vacuuming up all of the water. So this is all water that's like on the surface, because keep in mind at this point, the water has totally spread underneath all of the floorboards. The floorboards had warped just from the first rush of water the night before. They had already warped. We couldn't get all of the water. But at this point, it had just whatever we cleaned up on top, it didn't matter. It was already soaked underneath, and it kept spreading underneath. Hashtag just flooding things. Yep. Yeah. Ooh. Ooh. Get that. Oh, yep. That's a good sound. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Yep. I'm just out here living my best life. I love being me. So even what we were vacuuming up on top or soaking up on top, yeah, just didn't matter. And it was spreading farther and farther underneath the floorboards. The floor was really warping really badly. It was getting to the point where like when you would step somewhere, the floor would make this like gushy, like soaked sound. So it's like you'd step and it'd just be like it was bad. I think it was at this point where I was starting to really freak out, right? Because I had already been, you know, I was already stressing out and freaking out before, but it got to this point where I was really freaking out because I think we had another like rush of water in there somewhere, but it was like, I felt totally helpless, right? I felt that I couldn't call any more people because it was like they already were doing all that they could kind of do, which was clearly not enough. And I was just, yeah, I was panicking because there was such a long stretch of time in between that basically just like me and my sibling had to manage and like keep this water under control because these other people weren't. So I was super stressed. And so like while this guy was here like vacuuming up the water, like that's when I started to cry. I started to get really freaked out, and I had to like walk out of the room, and just like we had masks on because all these people were coming in and out. And so I started to like just like you know, like under the mask, and I was trying to not cry because someone was in there. Oh my gosh, it was, yeah, I was freaking out. Also, we were like totally out of resources too, so it's like I couldn't call anyone else. Everything we had was already soaked, and like the water vac was, you know, small. It could only do so much, and it could only be in one room. That was the other difficult thing, is that when the flood happened, it was in 2 rooms at the same time, and then it all, you know, made its way into the kitchen, and it was just like, we were out of resources too, so I felt like I just couldn't do anything. I felt really helpless. It was really upsetting. Eventually, we cleaned up all of the basically like surface water. There was still, again, water underneath all of the floorboards, but the maintenance guy who was there, he was like, hey, I will leave this water vac with you guys for if more water comes in, but he was like, I have to go, because apparently the apartment next door to me was also flooding, and they were saying it's like, oh, apparently it's worse over there. Like, no, it's not worse. It's just that we've been doing damage control since midnight last night and no one was over there. It was an empty apartment, so I'm sure it did seem worse at the time, but yeah, they had to go over there and try to help out with that situation. So we had like a moment of peace, although it was not peace because it was mostly just dread, where it was just quiet, you know, no more water was flooding in at this point. And so this was around, I want to say like noon or something, right? So we had been frantically trying to clean up water and like move things out of the way ever since, you know, that morning. But it was about noon right now. We were really hungry and tired, so we grabbed some food, grabbed some lunch. I'm just trying to like think about what to do, because it's like there's still hours until these other cleaning guys come, and it's like I was trying to think if there's anything else that I could do, and I just wasn't sure. And then my mom, because I was still messaging my mom throughout all of this, she was like, you need to call the office and ask if they have any vacant apartments to move into because of how bad the situation has gotten. And I was freaking out about this because I was really nervous they were just gonna tell me like, nope, there's nothing we can do, you know, like you just have to wait until the people come at 3, because I was just like, I don't know, I was high anxiety, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so I was nervous about calling them, but that nervousness went away when more water came rushing in. That's right, this is like the this is like the third time I think that we had a rush of water come in. So once again, it was like done eating, rush again and try to use towels to barricade. At this point too, we had the water vac, but we also were using like paper towels, and so we were just trying to stop the water from moving farther and farther out to where all of my things were, because all we could do was push all of my stuff back from that wall as much as we could, pile it on top of each other. And again, I have expensive equipment. I'm an audio music student, so I have a lot of like microphones, I'm looking at it right now, headphones, keyboard, computer. Like I had all of this stuff that was up against that wall that we had pulled all away, unplugged things, but it was like I had all of this gear basically that I had to try to keep up and away from the water. Yeah, so we had to jump back into action there, using all the paper towels, using the water vacuum, all of this stuff. And then I just called the office again, because there's no way that we could keep this situation under control until 3 o'clock, if they even showed up at 3 o'clock. I didn't even know for sure. So yeah, I called again. And at this point, since I kept calling back with all of this stuff, I was, you know, I just call and be like, hey, it's me, I'm from this unit, you know, the one that's flooding. Like that's how I would just start the phone calls, because it's like, you guys know that it's flooding at this point, so it's like, hey, it's me again, you know, flooding apartment. Hey again, yeah, more flooding. I don't even remember what exactly that I said, but basically I was like, this is getting out of control. Like the water damage to the floor is just, it's like the floor is ruined at this point. Do you have any vacant apartments available? And once I said that, she was like listening. She's like, oh, like, yeah, And then I'm like, do you have any vacant apartments? Like, do you have any places open? Because this is just ridiculous. And she was like, oh, well, I'll come take a look. Like, I'll come take a look at the floorboards, because I'm like, the floor is ruined. So she had to come look at it apparently. She's like, I'll be over in like 15-20 minutes, right? We kind of get that situation a little bit under control, but then more water. It wouldn't stop. It kept coming in waves. It was so bad. After, yeah, the phone call happened, more water happened. And so pretty much as they were arriving, we were like mid-flood frenzy again, and so they show up with like a couple tiny like rag towels. And okay, I say they, it's these two women who show up. There is one with a clipboard and there's one who's like, they're helping her. The one with the clipboard seems to be the one who is more in control of, or she seems like the higher up, and it seems like the other person she just kind of brought along also for some reason. I don't know. These women were not friendly. The whole time that I was working with them, they were acting as if this was like the biggest inconvenience to them. Like, I'm so sorry you're inconvenienced by my apartment flooding. You guys must have it really hard today. Anyway, we also were getting more maintenance guys back in here. They were kind of like bouncing back and forth between the empty apartment and like our apartment and helping us out over here. They brought like a bigger water vacuum in, and they also brought like these two industrial fans, which they just like set on top of the floor, which like was kind of cute because it's like, it's the whole floor, but they have like, you know, these industrial fans just kind of like sitting there like blowing a little bit, even though it's all soaked underneath the floorboards. I almost dropped my phone. Whoa, that was a big flinch. But yeah, so these two women show up, and like I said, they're acting as if this is like just a big inconvenience to them. They have like a couple of rags, like these little rag towels, and like they're in, you know, heels and pencil skirts as they come in, and they're just like, you know, putting, you know, they're helping. They're like, you know, they're like, oh, like, and I'm of course like disgusting, right? I've been doing this since like last night, really, like since midnight the night before, but I'm just like in sweats, a sweater, my hair's like roughly pulled up. I'm disgusting. Like, I've been cleaning up whoever's used water. All this has been sweaty, gross, just, yeah, disgusting. So they're like, and I'm like, just give that to me, just like dump it anywhere, doesn't matter, like I have stuff to clean up. They're like, we brought towels, and I'm like, good, because I need them now. So like I'm throwing all that down. They kind of like wander in a little bit. The floor is like gushing under their feet, and so I kind of take them through, and I'm just like, yep, like this is what it is, you know, everything is ruined, you know, like my stuff thankfully was up and out of the way, but I'm like, the floor is ruined basically. That's what I was showing them. I'm like, it's all underneath the floorboards, like I'm stepping on it, there's water, it's spread out through here, it's spread all in there, it's in here, it's everywhere, like it's everywhere, it's ruined. And they were like, oh yeah, okay, like not like I'm sorry. There was none of that. No one apologized at all. Like no one did. Maybe one of the maintenance guys did, who like felt bad for us and he was like sorry, but like the office management people didn't care. that was the impression that I got. They just were so inconvenienced and did not care. And so they're like, oh yeah, like okay, well we'll like call and like see what we can do. So they leave for, you know, for a couple minutes, and I'm still, you know, I talk to people when I can, but then I'm just like, I'm back to doing damage control, because it's like I'm on one side, Eve's on the other side. We have our, you know, water vacuums, towels, paper, whatever we can do. We're just on cleaning duty. I should also mention that at this point I had started to move my stuff out into cars, like my car and then my siblings' car, because I just like wasn't obviously comfortable keeping my stuff in there. And so I started moving my expensive things or more valuable things. Like the first thing out of there was my dad's guitar. That's been in my family ever since I was a baby. He would play it for me. I have it now. Like I had to get that out of there in my car. I just started moving like my computer, again my music stuff, out of there into vehicles, because I didn't know how the situation was going to play out, but I needed it out of that apartment. And I also explained to them too that like the women, I explained to them I was worried about mold as well. And again, like about the whole, they really didn't care. I was like, you know, the floor's ruined, you know, I'm worried about mold. The one woman with the clipboard was like, oh well, you know, this has happened before. And then she caught herself and was like, rarely, like it's rare that it happens, but like it's happened before. And she's like, we have, you know, the fans in here. She's like, there won't be mold. Likely story. First of all, I'm not a trusting person. I'm just not. And, you know, I'm also pretty sure that it wasn't supposed to flood. Also, the emergency drain people were supposed to come right away. A lot of things were supposed to happen in this situation. So you just telling me that mold just won't happen, I do not believe you at all. At all. You are, no, none of that. So yeah, they leave, make their calls, whatever. They come back, and I think I had gone outside to like move something to my car. I came back in and I saw not the one with the clipboard, so the one who like was the assistant or something. I saw her first, and I was like, what's going on? And she was like, oh, well, we'll replace the floor. And I kind of like looked at her, and she could tell she was like not sure about what she was saying. She was kind of doing like the whole like glancing, you know, she was like, yeah, they'll you know, replace the floor. And she was not at all confident. And then the other woman with the clipboard walks in, and like the assistant woman like looks at her, and she's like, hey, so and so, I forget her name, but they didn't introduce themselves, but she was like, hey, like Kylie or whatever her name was. She's like, can you explain to her how how that works with getting new floorboards? And she was like, oh yeah. She's like, well, you know, get the flooring replaced like right away, you know. And I just kind of like stand there, and like we all just kind of have this moment of like awkward silence, because I was like, okay, how does that happen? I'm like, how is the floor going to be replaced? Because all of my stuff, like I'm still living in there. And then I asked you, I'm like, when is the floor going to be replaced? And they're like, immediately. Which, red flag. If someone ever tells you that, that is not a timeline. That is not tomorrow. That is not in an hour. That is not, you know, in a couple days. That's not in a week. That just immediately. What does immediately mean? Very vague. That does not tell me anything. And so, and keep in mind, even the one with the clipboard too, she was like doing these glances like to the other woman. So these women were like very unsure of what they were saying. There was no confidence. And that was when I sort of like realized their body language and stuff, and like jumped on the situation, because I was like, yeah, no, so how am I supposed to like, how am I supposed to live in here when my floor is gonna be replaced? Like, how is it supposed to happen? Like, how does it? And she tried to tell me, the woman with the clipboard, she tries to tell me, and she didn't really say like even clearly. She was just kind of like stumbling through how she was saying this, but she was like, well, you'll just like, you know, they'll work over here, and you'll just like move your stuff over. And I was like, no. No. Yeah, not sure what she was talking about. And so yeah, I just jump on this opportunity, and I mentioned, well, the wall over there by the window, which is like up against the ground and everything, because this is a basement apartment, and I was like, that wall has leaked too when it rains, which it had, like that had happened before. Not to this degree, but a little bit of water would come in on that side. And so I was like, so basically replacing the floor isn't going to solve the problem. I'm like, this place leaks, and you know, there could be mold. I bring that up again, but I'm like, this whole place leaks. Like, replacing the floorboards is not going to solve this problem. And so right when I mentioned like the side of the wall leaking, she was like, she goes, well, that's not our area, so we'll look into vacant apartments for you. What do you mean that's not your area? What are you talking about? What do you mean that's not your area? This whole situation should be your area. I don't know what she was talking about. You are the people who are supposed to know what's going on, and clearly no one knows what's going on here. They leave again. And again, I'm just like cleaning up things, trying to move things out in my car. They come back and they're like, we have an open unit. You can come take a look at it. And they were like, it's sort of like an experimental thing that we're doing where we're trying to go for a more industrial look. It was ugly. It was ugly. But anyway, I'm jumping a little bit ahead. These two women take me to, like, basically it's the same building, but it's just like a door down, so it's like not comforting really. They take me to this apartment, ugly, and it's another basement apartment. And so I'm already like turned off by all of this, because they're telling me it's like, you know, we're doing this, like blah blah blah, like this is new, like. And then the woman too was like, oh yeah, this wall here has like just been replaced, so like you don't have to worry about leaks. Which again, I do not believe it. Even if it was true, I do not believe it, because I am so not trusting of like anything that these people are saying. So I sort of stand there and I'm like, do you have anything that is above ground? Do you have anything that's above ground? Because I said, personally, my bad experiences have happened in these basement apartments, in a basement unit. Do you have anything that is above ground, like up? And they were kind of like, well, is ground level okay? Like, is ground and I'm just like, can you just look? Can you just check to see. And I'm trying to be very polite and nice about this. And when they're doing these things for me, I'm like, you know, thank you. Yeah, so I'm just like, can you just look? And they're like, yes, yep, we will check. So we split up, go our separate ways. I go back to cleaning duty in my place. It's just an utter mess. There's people in and out. Yeah, it's so bad. So after that, they come back again. They're like, we found one for you. We found one that's up and above. And they took me to this apartment here. So, and it's actually just like one building down, but it's in a separate building from the one that had all the problems. They show this to me, you know, I take a look at it. It's basically the same thing from my other apartment. It's just like mirrored is basically all that it is. I take a look at it. There's a couple dead bugs on the floor, but I'm like, it's not flooding and I can vacuum up the bugs. So I'm like, cool, yep, this'll work. And they're like, okay, cool, we will leave this unlocked for you and you can like just move your stuff in. I'm like, oh, I can just move in like right now. They're like, yep, you can move in your stuff. You can come by the office later and like grab a key, sign the paperwork, but we'll just leave this unlocked for you. So I was like, cool, thanks. I will get started on that. So that was at least a bit of a relief. And this was like almost 3 o'clock at this point. So thankfully I had gotten all of this settled and figured out before those guys had even come, because yeah, at this point like the other place was just ruined. I go back to my flooded apartment and I had to like talk with Eve because at this point my head was like a total mess. Okay, what do I do next? Like how do I that's how it was basically the whole day. And Eve was very helpful in every aspect really, but also in just being like, I would just tell Eve, it's like, here's what has to happen, but I don't know in what order, like I don't know how to do it. And Eve would be like, okay, do this first, then do this, then do this. So eventually we figured that I would go to the office, Eve would stay at the apartment and again try to hold the fort down. I would go to the office, I would grab the keys so that we can just move the expensive things out of the cars into this new place. We can lock it up, keep the stuff safe, and then just start to move things out of the flooded place into the new place. I go over to the office, I drive over there. my car wouldn't start at first. It just wouldn't start but I got it to. That's another story. We don't need to. It was just a little bit of extra spice to my, you know, mental state, my emotional state, just a little bit of extra, you know, helpfulness there. Also, it started snowing. I forgot to mention this too, but it was snowing, right? Like the big wet snow. So it was cold. It started snowing, which was another just little spice to just really, you know, add a little bit of extra zest to the situation. Anyway, I go to the office. I grab the keys, quickly look over the lease, sign everything, you know, get everything good. And I pick up my scholarship because this is another just kind of like a side thing that was going on like in the background of all of this. But apparently I had won a scholarship that I had submitted like in the spring. And like I'd got an email, or I'd seen the email at least, the night that the flooding had started. So I had seen that like I had won this scholarship, which, you know, was great, but also it was like that was bottom of the priority list at this point. And so like whenever I would call the office, they would be like, and by the way, you're our scholarship winner, like you can come pick that up. And like, thanks, but I can't come pick that up, I'm a little busy at the moment. And they were like, oh yeah, like we get it, but like just so you know, like you want, it's like, thanks. Anyway. So yeah, at this point, I really didn't care what happened to the place anymore. I was just, I got to leave, right? So all I cared about was getting my stuff and getting it moved out of there as fast as possible. But at least now I didn't have to worry about like how I was gonna live in that situation, or how, yeah, I didn't have to worry about that anymore. I could just get out of there, which was great. Somewhere within this time too, like in between the time where, you know, we were moving things out of there and before the drain cleaner contractor people came, we got another like rush of water, but this time it was absolutely like sewage, because that place stank. oh my god, we got another flood rush and it just like smelled nasty. I had to open the windows. It was freezing cold because it was snowing outside. I didn't care. We were sweating inside anyway. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. And I didn't stop moving. Like the only break that we had was that kind of like lunch break thing, but aside from that we hadn't stopped moving because now it was just like a race to get everything out of there because clearly things were just getting worse and worse in there, and I didn't want to wait for like the walls to explode with like yeah, I don't know. Just getting out of there. Okay, so at 3 o'clock, or right around 3 o'clock, the drain people did show up. They had like their truck and everything, and they came in, and at this point, you know, if I was still planning on living there, I probably would have asked more questions, but at this point, again, I just didn't care. I told them, I'm like, yep, I'm leaving, so like you guys just do what you gotta do if you need me. Like I'm gonna be in between here and this other place, but like bye. Basically. And they were like, oh, you're leaving? And it's like, I'm not staying here. Like yeah, no, I'm leaving. First of all, they didn't even go to the closet that the first maintenance guy had opened and like opened that panel and been like, it's the main drain. Like they didn't even look at that. They went straight to the bathroom. So like, but again, I wasn't asking questions. Someone's calling me. My mom is trying to FaceTime me. Mama.
Hi.
Can I call you back? I'm filming a video.
Yeah. I can just talk with you later. Okay, see you later, honey.
All right, bye. I love my mom. Anyway, yeah, so these guys didn't even bother to go to that closet. They just went straight to the bathroom and were like, they started to mess with the toilet. So I'm getting a little bit concerned because I was like, okay, we had cleared stuff out of the like living room area where that closet was because I was assuming that they were going to be like working in that area, and like I wanted my stuff out of the way in case like something exploded, it wouldn't get all over my stuff. So now I was like, okay, like let's switch to moving things out of this area instead where they seem to be camping out. But, right, we were in between, and remember how I said to grab a snack earlier? You might want to take a minute to not snack for a second because it's about to get nasty, like nastier than it already has been. We're about to get like real nasty. After one of the trips from this place to moving things back into my place, the guys had mostly cleared out of there because like I said, they were also working on the apartment next door. However, for whatever reason, these guys, the drain people, had taken my toilet like out of the bathroom entirely actually, and had put it in my bedroom. So it was just like sitting out completely from the bathroom. And then as I'm rounding the corner again to grab stuff out of my bedroom, which the bathroom was like right next to, I look in my bathroom and see that there's just like a hole in the wall, which already is kind of odd because usually with toilets there's a hole in the floor, but there was just a hole in the wall. And as I'm just like, I just glanced over there to be like, what's the situation in the bathroom, just like out of curiosity. No one's in there. I look over at this hole in the wall, and liquid, I'm not gonna say water, liquid starts to just like pour out of that hole in the wall onto my bathroom floor. And so I'm about to like turn to go grab the guys and be like, hey, there's water, there's liquid coming out, I don't know, something's coming out of that hole, like maybe you guys want to come in here and take a look at it. But before I do that, as I'm still looking at the hole, I see 2 pieces of solid human waste just fall out of the hole onto my floor. That is seared, that image is seared into my brain. I can never unsee that. When I tell you guys I got to witness a literal shitstorm, like what do you do in that situation? I didn't have to care about it because I got to leave, but it's just like, well, like that's what you look at that and you're like, all right. So I leave, I find them out in the hall and I'm like, hey guys, yeah, stuff is coming out of that hole that you guys left in the wall. I might want to go take a look at that. So we just kept moving my stuff out of there. They kind of cleaned it up. At one point, you know, again, we were just moving things back and forth. We were so tired, like everything was hurting. We had been cleaning up flood and moving things and lifting things and running all over the place, high stress, high anxiety. Like, we were exhausted, but we couldn't stop because, again, we didn't know when more water was going to be coming in. The drain people were there, so we were, you know, hoping that they were actually fixing the problem. But yeah, we were so tired. But at one point we just arrived back at the flooded place, and there's just like no one left in there. So I guess the guys, the drain people, had just packed up their stuff and left in between when I was over here at this new place. The toilet was back on the wall, you know, the human waste was not visibly on the floor anymore. Didn't make me want to go in there though. From that point out, it was mostly just moving as it was snowing outside. The other thing too was that my sibling and I were kind of on a time crunch as well at this point too, because one of the maintenance people from just all of the people who were in and out of that place, one of them had actually said like, hey, we can probably help you guys, you know, move your bigger items that you guys won't be able to move by yourself. Like, we can come by and help you if you just like give us a call, give us like, you know, 20 minutes to get over here, you know, we can be over here and help you guys move out that stuff. So, which was great, but it's kind of like we had to move out a lot of the other stuff beforehand to get it out of the way so we could have space to move out these bigger things. And I only had a couple of things. It was like this couch, my big bookshelf, and like my bed frame. You know, those were kind of just the bigger things that we needed help with. Everything else we were just able to move ourselves. So I wanted to try to get everything moved as quickly as possible so we could call the maintenance people and have them help us before their shifts ended for the day, right? I won't go into too much detail about all that, but basically I called them and they were like, no, we can't help you, but security can help you, and they'll be here in like 15 minutes. So just like wait 15 minutes and call back. So then I called back. I got like to talk to this office person and she was like, that's weird. They usually don't help with that, but like if maintenance said that the security would help, I guess I'll send him over. So guess who shows up? Guess who shows up to help us move the rest of my things? It's the security guard from the night before, because of course it is. He shows up and he like comes in and he's like, he's like, did you find out what happened? And I was like, like, no, like kind of, I don't, main drain, I don't know, I don't care. I was so tired at that point. It's like, first of all, I was upset to see him again, because also I was expecting like maintenance crew, like a couple of guys coming by to like, you know, help us move stuff. No, it's this one security guard from the night before, whatever, like, can you help us move this stuff? And he was like, well, I'm not supposed to, like, you can't tell anybody. He was like, there's a liability, like I could get in trouble, like blah blah blah. But it's like, this has been all of your guys' fault to begin with, and you can't help like us make this emergency move. Like, your maintenance team can't help us move the stuff even after they offered to. It was, yeah, he brings, the security guard ends up bringing a little like wheelie cart. He says he's gonna bring a dolly. It's not, it's like a wheelie cart thing that's like the size of my coffee table, and he was like, all right, like oh my god. We do manage to move the stuff over, but once he's done, he doesn't ask like, is there anything else you guys need? Like, do you guys need any more help? He was like, bye, you guys can use the dolly if you want, and he just like dipped out real quick. He like did not want to help us anymore, so he left. Thankfully, yeah, we were able to get most of the stuff over. There were just a couple of things left, again, pushed very far back from the walls, that we were going to be getting the next day, but for the most part, we were moved out and we got to spend the night in this place. Oh my gosh. So that's pretty much what happened. We spent all the rest of the next day moving in the rest of the stuff, buying new towels because all of my towels were definitely absolutely ruined. I cannot thank my sibling Eve enough for helping me out. If they hadn't been there to help me, I do not know what I would have done. I'm so thankful that they were there to help me. They were so helpful. Yeah, I'm pretty much all moved in at this point. There's basically just like cabinet organizing and little details of things that I have to do now. I even have like my art back up on my wall, at least in this room. Unfortunately, it is still like the middle of the semester. School has not stopped. I am now behind on many of my assignments, which does not feel great. So yeah, actually my professors have been really cool about it. I emailed them like the day that it happened and I was like, this is what's happening, just letting you guys know if I can't attend classes, like this is why. They've all been really cool about it and really like understanding. But yeah, that's that's what's happened to me recently. I guess the moral of the story, like the lesson to be learned, if there is one, is to ask for what you want. If I hadn't told those women that I wanted to leave, if I hadn't told them that I wanted to get out of that apartment, they would have tried to keep me in that same place and just basically kept me living in squalor, essentially. Like, that place was an absolute wreck, and they didn't want me to like leave at first. So I was able to ask, I was polite about it, and thankfully I didn't have to go like my relative is a lawyer kind of a thing, which actually my actual aunt is a housing lawyer, so I could have gone that route if I wanted to. But I feel like, especially for young adults, it's like we don't know what kind of power we have in situations like that. So I didn't even know if like I could like threaten anything. I didn't know what kind of power I had in that situation, which I could have. So you should know that you can say that, like, you can get a lawsuit involved, like you can get a lawyer involved, you can say those kinds of things to people, especially if it's where you're living. That is absolutely unacceptable, and you should absolutely try to ask and be firm about, you know, your rights basically, and getting out of there if you can. Obviously it's really intimidating and it's scary, and sometimes it just might not work, but I would absolutely encourage you to just ask and to ask questions. Because, you know, when I started to ask, like, you say you're gonna replace the floor, but like, how is that going to happen with me living in there? And they can't explain it. You know what I mean? Like, ask these things so that they can kind of, you know, if they get stuck, then you have hopefully an opportunity to ask to leave that situation or to ask for something better. So that is basically the lesson that I learned, if there was one in here, is to be firm and really hold your ground in situations like this, because that was absolutely ridiculous the way that they treated me, how they acted about the whole thing. It was incredibly unprofessional how the whole thing was handled. There was so much miscommunication. It was just an utter disaster, and like, I'm kind of laughing and like making jokes about it now, but it was really awful. Obviously the situation itself, but it was also just really awful how much people didn't seem to care and were willing to just like let me like live in that situation. It was just really disappointing, I guess. So, but thankfully I'm out of that situation now. I am in a better apartment. I don't feel super comfortable because I'm still with the same apartment complex, and if I can afford it, I will not be renewing this lease because, oh my gosh, it feels like no one's on my side here. I got that scholarship, which was nice, but it's like, it's not worth staying. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you got some amusement out of my insane and ridiculous situation. So if you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up. I usually make vlog content on here about my college life, so this is a little bit different from what I usually make. So if you're interested in seeing what my life is like as a college student, and specifically as a music industry student, you can hit subscribe and check back for more videos like that. But until then, I have a lot of work to catch up on, but I will probably play video games a little bit first because I am a little bit overwhelmed and burnt out. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.
How you doing, Eve? Lunch. Whoa, I'm getting good light up here though. Silver lining. Interesting. Look what's in my old apartment. Mold armor. No mold, huh? Interesting.